Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick. We got Sean and Harrison tonight. How we doing, fellas?
Good, guys. Good to see you.
Good. How we doing, boys?
Not too bad. Baseball's right around the corner. Well, I mean, spring
Baseball's
training
here.
has started.
Baseball's here.
But, I mean, like, legit baseball starts next week, WBC, which we'll get into. But, sure. But before we get going, just like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. You can watch on Twitch if you would like. We are on all of those platforms as of now. All right. First things first, let's check Manny Machado off the list here. I'm not going to sign with San Diego. Okay, I want 10 and 400. You know what? I'm not going to sign. Okay, never mind. I'll take 11 and 350.
Yeah.
So Manny Machado signs 11 years, 350. Now you got Machado and Bogarts on that side of the infield for the next decade. I mean, it's smart on the Padres. And
Sure is.
I mean, for Manny not to move, I think it's a smart move for him because they're going to go all out to keep Soto as well in 3 years. So keeping that core together for a while, they're going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres they said they were going all in. They're going to be contenders. They wanted to be for a while. They continue to sign these guys to big contracts. You know, the left side of the infield is going to be really slow in 6 or 7 years when those guys are in their late 30s. But I think for the next 5, 6, 7 years, they're going to be a contender every single year with that core.
Yeah. I mean, and they got Don Orsillo calling games for the next 100 years.
I miss Don.
And there's nobody better. I mean, it's
Donnie.
I always miss him, and then I miss him so much more like the first week of spring training when he's back, and then he's just the best. He's the absolute best.
Yep.
Look, I think it's smart for San Diego. I think it's smart for Machado. I'm not in the room. I have no idea. I have to imagine. He's a Scott Boras guy, right?
I don't know for sure.
Almost
but
positive, but
okay. I would have to imagine Manny and Scott chatted. And yes, I want 10 years, 400. Obviously, so do I. I would like my job to pay me $400 million.
Wouldn't we all?
I wonder if there was a hard conversation saying, listen, man, who knows at the next CB, who knows where these contracts are going to go? Who knows? You have an opportunity right now to sign something for the team you're currently playing for that's really goddamn good and will be good for the next 6 or 7 years. And they're going to pay you $350 million. And it's one of those things. Tony Clark just came out, right? And he said, Players Association will not accept a salary cap. It's not something the Players Association will ever do, right? It's a weird thing to say right now, considering the CBA is 4 years away. That's a weird thing to put your foot in the ground. It reminded me almost. Do you remember when George Bush came out and he was like, "No new taxes. There will be no new taxes," and then there were new taxes. It was almost like one of those things. We're gonna say it so firm that it actually probably means the opposite. That's almost the sense that I got from Tony Clark. And I wonder if players are starting to. Well, I shouldn't say that. This is one example. But I wonder if Manny Machado looked at that and he's like, you know what? Who knows what the next CBA. And who knows if the owners are going to be, kind of nervous on that. And we're not going to give out the big 400 unless you're Shohei. Shohei's going to get it next year.
Yep.
And then that's it.
But I mean,
I think it was smart for both sides. I guess that's where I'll end it.
And just look at how the contracts have kind of stretched out and the average annual value has decreased over the last couple of years, right? Ever since the lockout. You're not seeing the $35 million a year contracts anymore. They're 26 to 28 to maybe a couple 30s. You're not seeing the mid to high 30s any other than Judge, and then obviously we're going to see with Ohtani. But those guys are the cream of the crop, right? I don't know. I think it's absolutely smart for Machado to take this because we don't know where this is going in the next 4 years. But they're definitely got to put in a floor at least. They're going to make the lower.
I mean, with one will come the other.
Right.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't put a ceiling in and then not put a floor in because that's really going to anger your larger market teams. But back to the point about asking for 10 and 400. I mean, every player, even look at arbitration. Everybody goes in with a high number. The team's going low, the players going high, and they usually meet somewhere in the middle. That's exactly what they did here. He was going to make $30 million a season anyways. They basically just tacked on a bunch more years at the end, gave him a few extra $1 million and called it a day. So I think it was part of the Padres to at least have the conversation and get the offer in front of him to get him under contract, because there's not a lot of third basemen you're going to find that are better than Manny Machado, and I absolutely despise Manny Machado. There's not a player in baseball I hate more than him. But at the same time, 11 years, $350 to keep that guy there, it's a really smart decision.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Other news: Brian Reynolds was offered by the Pirates for 6 years, $80 million. He turned it down because he wanted 8 years, $134 million, and the Pirates aren't budging. So he's like, I want to be traded. So Brian Reynolds is most likely on the market. I mean, the Pirates could still say, "Hey, we're not trading you." However, they could get a pretty good package for Brian Reynolds at this point. But
Probably.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're the Pirates, why wouldn't you pay him 8 and 134?
because you don't plan on winning.
Okay, but he's like, other than O'Neal Cruz, he's probably the reason people go to Pirates games. Am I wrong?
No, I think Brian Reynolds was the guy. I think O'Neal Cruz is becoming that guy. But I think when you look overall at what the Pirates, the balance of the Pirates' existence, they are gonna bring up good players, hang on to them as long as they're affordable, and then cut them loose. The same thing the Athletics do. Same thing the Reds do. And are they? Why wouldn't they pay him? Because they don't care if they win, and they don't even care if they draw. That organization, I don't think, really cares if they're successful or not, if they're competitive or not. They're just existing. They're existing in that no man's land, like the Reds and the Athletics do.
Yeah.
Look, I like Brian Reynolds. I think he's a good player. I think he would be I think his numbers would be a little bit better if he was on a more complete team that that had guys on base and he's protected in lineup, like all that stuff in baseball comes together. Brian Reynolds in 4 years, I mean, his career numbers, he's a 281 hitter. He's averaging 24 home runs and 79 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 32 doubles, 164 hits in a season's the average. He's a pretty good hitter. He's never scored 100 runs in a year, but again, I mean, a lot of that is dependent on the team. But I guess the point I'm trying to get to is, like, Brian Reynolds is not Juan Soto. Like, you're not like the idea here that's like, well, I want 135 million, and if you're not going to pay that, trade me so that you can make your farm system better, which they will. He'd draw a good return. But if I'm on the other side, like, there's probably only a handful, if that, of teams in baseball that would be willing to give up what the Pirates are going to want, considering Brian Reynolds is not going to make just anyone better. He's a good player that, with the right team, can put them over the top.
Fair.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like it's a weird situation.
He's a good player. He's not like an organizational centerpiece, but he's like a good third or fourth guy that'll round off a good lineup. But for $16 million a year, that's really, considering what you get for him, not a bad deal.
No.
But at the same time, there's only so many teams out there that would actually have a package of prospects that they'd be willing to give up that that would actually lure him out.
Yeah. Morgan makes a good point. He probably just gave him a number he knew that they wouldn't pay him, so he's more likely to be traded. I mean, which probably isn't far from the truth. I mean, if he's got a good agent and he wants out, maybe he wants to win somewhere.
Then just say
he's
that.
Not going to win it. Right. Well,
then just go to them and
that.
say, like, it just, I don't know. I mean, I guess we're getting into the whole psychology of it. But to me, like, that probably does more harm than good. Like, you're going to now have the reputation as a guy that's going to say whatever he wants just to
get out.
I don't know. I just, to me, like, just be upfront. If you don't want to be here, don't just go to the team. Most players, from what you hear, don't have a problem saying that. Hey, I don't want to be here. Unless I'm part of your future plans, I don't want to be here. Trade me.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's literally what they're saying. But what hits the media is the softer story. So he doesn't sound like that guy. But
true.
The rumors were Sean Murphy was begging Oakland to get rid of him because he didn't want to be there anymore. Minaya basically worked his way out of there by telling the organization, I'm just going to stop showing up if you don't trade me. Like, there's stories behind all these guys that get moved. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what Pittsburgh has done is they basically created an environment that players don't want to be in. So when you have a guy like Brian Reynolds come through, or O'Neal Cruz in 5 years is going to be in New York for all we know. He won't be in Pittsburgh long term. They'll never keep him. Just like they didn't keep Garrett Cole, just like that. You can go down the list of all these guys they haven't kept.
Oh yeah.
They're just not going to. They're not going to build a competitive. They're not going to build a competitive ballpark with a salary, with a payroll that actually makes sense. They're going to create. They're gonna bring in prospects, create young players, spin them off, and try to catch lightning in a bottle one year with a bunch of young guys that play really well, like the Rays did. But it's not sustainable if you're not going to invest in some players. And that's where the Rays are different. They've actually paid some guys to keep them there to be the core, and then surrounded them with good young players. The Pirates have paid nobody, kept nobody, and they just keep cycling through players.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the Reds, what are the Reds going to do when Jonathan India he comes up and he's eligible for arbitration and all that? They'll do the same thing. They're going to spin him off.
Yeah.
I mean, the Reds have some really good talent coming up. They might
crazy
try to see what they got in 3 or 4 years and then make a decision, because that would be around the time that India is probably eligible for free agency.
Yeah.
So
he does, but I think
we'll
not these things don't happen in a vacuum. Like, guys like Jonathan India see the way that guys like Jesse Winker were treated, and it's like, why would I give these guys the benefit of the doubt? Right. Like, Jonathan India won Rookie of the Year. Like, he was National League Rookie of the Year. He had a hell of a year. And then going into his second year, the Reds were like, "Oh, like, your best player on your team, we're going to trade him."
Yep.
Like, I get what you're saying, and I agree, because they do have players that are going to be hitting that stride at the same time. But those guys just watched what they did to their really good players when they had them under control. Yep. And so again, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying, if I was a player there, like, I would look at that and just go, you know what? Like, fool me once, right? I'm not saying it's no chance. I'm not saying I want to be out of here. I'm just saying, we're already starting off on the wrong foot here. So let's.
Yeah. But I mean, we'll see. It's really hard for these small market teams to be able to catch lightning in a bottle that one season where everything goes right and every star aligns and they're competitive one time. Like, that's hard to do with a bunch of young players. And the Reds, for a long time, the Orioles, but they're transitioning away from that. But again, like, they've got this window here with young guys that's going to close. These are like showcase teams. Like, you come up with them, you show what you can do, and you just wait to see where you're going to land. Like, it's not your forever home. You're just waiting to see what organization is going to adopt you, because that's your foster home.
It's your starter house.
Yeah, nobody comes up with the Reds or the A's or thinking this is going to be forever. They're just wondering, where am I going to go next, and how do I get out of here?
Yeah, I'm never going to see the end of this first 30-year mortgage, but I'm just getting some equity.
Exactly. Making a stop here to trade up.
All right. Well, we'll move from that, and spring training games have started, and we're going to jump right into it. Red Sox, Braves, bottom of the ninth, tie game, 2 strikes, and the umpire calls strike 3 on the batter because he wasn't set in the box, which the pitcher thought it was him. The catcher thought it was him. The batter didn't know it was him, but it was the batter. So pitch clock ends the game in a 6-6 tie in the ninth. Go to social media. Everyone's blowing up. Oh, get the pitch clock out of here. Blah, 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 blah. Like, let's calm down, right? Like, it's brand new. The players are going to get it. They're going to get the cadence of the game. It's been in minor league baseball for 3 years, and it has not affected a single game. I'm sure there's one out there where they've called it, but not to end a game. I mean, it's not going to affect how we watch the game. When you watch it on TV, the pitch clock is not going to be an issue. It's not going to change how you take in the baseball game. It's my thought on it.
No, I agree. I look, spring training is for a lot of things. It's for guys getting back into baseball shape. It's for, pitchers strengthening out those arms so that they can, get to a spot where they're pitching 6-7 innings. It's for, hitters to work their way up to getting 3-4 at bats in a game. It's all those things. But it's also for umpires to enforce certain rules, new rules. It's for players to get the new feel of these things. Like, that's what it's all for. Like, it's the same thing we see in preseason in football, right? Like, they'll come out and say, we're going to emphasize this particular rule. And then we see it called 1,000 times in the preseason. because you got to get these players used to it. You can't do this XYZ thing. Well, this is a pretty big change for a lot of these guys. Like a lot of these guys in Major League Baseball, the last time they were in the minors, pitch clock wasn't a thing. It's like they've never played with this. Like this is a big change. So not only is it new, not only are the players not used to it, I think the umpires are being extra anal about it at the beginning of spring training here, just to really, really try to drive it home. And so like I was laughing.
Yeah.
I was actually watching that game when I saw it, like watching it live. And then you go on social media, and then you have all these people who are literally like, if this was Game 7 of the World Series, imagine that's pathetic. It's like we couldn't be farther away from Game 7. Like this is the first game of spring training. Like let's just relax. Like I can guarantee you that will not happen in a regular season game, let alone a World Series game. It just
the best thing about this is everyone's forgot about the size of the bases now. No one's complaining about the size of the bases anymore because now they got the pitch clock to complain about. But
the size of the bases is the ultimate. Let's complain about something just for the sake of complaining about something.
It's out of control. But I don't know.
The base size thing is funny because like I think the general consensus is you wouldn't what's
Joey Votto didn't break his stance once.
Yeah, did you see it?
Yeah.
Did you
I
see
haven't
it?
seen it yet.
No, he refused to move. He's
awesome.
like, I'm not gonna get caught by this clock.
Awesome.
But that's Joey Votto. Like he's out there having fun like a friggin' kid, making fun of it. But the base thing, when they're zoomed in, you can tell the base is bigger, and you can see by the way the guys are straddling it and putting their legs in front of it. It's a bigger base. Is it substantially bigger, and does it change the game? No. It just sometimes you kind of see it and go, oh wow, that just seems a little bit out of place. But the pitch clock thing, I hate the rule. I think it's stupid. I think it changes the flow of the game. It's going to make batters and pitchers get ready before they're ready, which in some cases is a good thing. But I do think that in May we'll forget about it because everybody's going to be used to it. The players are going to adjust. The umpires are going to be in the flow of it and maybe giving these guys that extra hair they might need to actually set their foot. I think right now they're being a little bit obnoxious about it to drive home the point of, hey, this is happening, like get used to it. But I do think that in a month we're all going to forget this is even a rule because everybody's going to be used to it. And to Sean's point, there's no way in a World Series game a guy's going to miss the pitch clock. Like if anything, they're going to be like hypersensitive to it in those big moments. This is spring training. The guy that got called for it, I'm pretty sure, is a AA player who was in the box. Like I don't think, and nobody was really that that ornery about it, given the fact it was a spring training game in the second one. But I do think it's going to be a non-issue once the season gets going. But I still hate the rule. I think it's stupid.
See, I've really done a 180. Not that I was against it fully when it started. And I've been to some minor league games like down in Hartford and all that where they've had it. And so Nick's point, like especially when you're in the stadium, it doesn't impact the way you watch the game. Like we go down to the Yard Goats games. It's like, you don't even notice it. You really don't. I mean, you see it. I mean, you see that it gets reset in between the pitch.
Yep.
And then you kind of see that it goes off when they hit the set. That's it. Like it doesn't, like you're not watching it like you're at a football game. You're like watching the play clock to see if he gets it off in time. It's not that. Like it's not.
No, I was
It's not.
I was at a few Sea Dogs games last summer, and I was kind of like I was focused on the pitch clock because it was coming to Major League Baseball, and by the second inning I forgot it was there.
Yeah,
it didn't matter anymore.
It doesn't impact the game. Early results in the early spring training games that I've watched, I like it, man. The games just go. The games flow, the innings. Like it's the one thing that I will say that is tough and will be tough is I do think the batters are going to need some way to break a rhythm of a pitcher. Like,
yeah.
And I think like for a guy like who I love because he pitches for the Mets, but like Max Scherzer is like the ultimate like in rhythm pitcher. If Max Scherzer gets in a rhythm and you can't break his rhythm, don't even go to the box. Like you don't have a chance.
Just stay in the dugout.
Right. Like if you can't step out to try and break him, like to get like if you can't do that as a hitter, forget about it. Like if he gets in the rhythm, you literally don't have a chance. So like I do think baseball may need to like hey, maybe the All-Star break halfway through the year. Let's take a look. Let's hear some reviews from players. Let's see, like maybe we tweak it a little bit.
Yep.
Like I still like the idea because I do think we are not good test subjects. We, people that love baseball regardless, are not good people to ask because I will watch baseball regardless.
100%.
I will say, though, having watched the early spring training, some of these games, like it didn't really hit me because I was just so used to it taking 4 hours. Like I was just like, you know what? That's just what baseball is. I love it because there's no time limit, yada, yada.
Well, yeah.
But
We're
then you
the
see-
people that say, well, baseball is great because it's timeless.
Right. But you see some of these games and the way that they flow, and it's like, shit, I could get used to this. Like
Yeah.
there's just something about an inning that's just goes, it just goes.
Yeah. I mean, I
So-
love going to a minor league game because you're out of there in like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
It will be interesting though to see the average spring training game, right? And then once the real advertisements start coming in the regular season, where they need those time slots during the broadcast, if we're still getting 3+ hour games. Like that's what I'm, because you're not going to get that same advertisement in spring training games. I don't care what you say.
Well,
During
no,
during regular season, those advertisements, Sullivan Tire's got to be up there every half inning on a
Right.
Red Sox broadcast. So you got to give them that time slot. So like it's going to be interesting to see if that does extend the game when
Well,
more viable
and it-
advertisements come along.
And it does. So in 2022, the average spring training game was 3 hours and 1 minute. The regular season games were like 3 hours and 9 minutes. When they measured spring training this year to spring training last year, is actually 23 minutes shorter.
Yeah.
So they were
right.
measuring spring
Okay.
versus spring.
All right.
And you're right. The regular season games do take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes longer because you get some extra ads and all that stuff. But they measured spring versus spring, and it went from 3:01 to 2:38. So it actually did spring training to spring training bring the time down.
But we'll see.
Okay, fair.
Like you'll see. That's early. I mean, we're a half week through the first handful of spring training games.
Right.
Like we're going to get deeper into the spring, and you're going to see, actual full lineups playing more often.
Right.
I mean, listen, there's only so much you can do. Baseball is a game that is timeless. No matter how much you want to put a clock on it,
Yep.
it is. There is no clock.
1,000%.
So you are going to have games where guys are fighting off tough pitches and long at bats and high scoring games that take like that's just something that you can't do anything about that.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
those will happen. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much change we're going to see as far as timing is concerned when we get like full lineups. It's easy to say now when you got a bunch of single A and double A players up there.
Right.
They don't make a lot of contact. It's weak contact. We're not fouling off tough pitches.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
all
not
those things
they're
are
not working Max Scherzer like Juan Soto would.
Like all those things are going to happen in major league games. So all that to say, I like it so far. They will have to tweak it. They will have to make adjustments. It does take away, to Morgan's point, the rule takes away the mind games between a pitcher and a hitter. It does. I mean, I don't totally disagree with that.
See, I don't think it does really, because
Well,
as long as the pitcher is here, the clock stops. They don't have to deliver the pitch in that
But
time,
not-
and
But
that
not
pitch
for the
clock.
batter though. So
But not for the bat,
so
right? Like
gone are the days of walking around the umpire to get yourself together to make Max Scherzer wait for you.
right.
Gone are the
like, you
days of
can't-
1 foot in the
Okay,
box
well
where you're
then that's fair.
fiddling
That's
with your
fair.
batting glove. So like to Sean's point earlier, like you can't break the rhythm of a guy like Scherzer now because you've got to be in the box.
And you
used to
can't
have some
step out.
leeway with being able to step
Like-
out or maybe walk around the backside of the plate and adjust your batting gloves. Like they gave
Like,
you
as
that
long as-
opportunity.
Right. As long as Max is on the mound, like you're in the box, or
Right.
else
It's
it's
gonna
a
be
strike
like-
against.
So
The
if
third
anything,
the third base coach is literally just going to have time to go hit and run,
Yeah.
steal.
well, and that's the hard
Fine.
part. If
Like-
anything, a guy like Max Scherzer is going to he's got the upper hand now because he's going to get the ball, get right back on the mound, and these
Okay.
guys
As
aren't
As if
even
he
going to be
did,
able to look
as
for
if
us
he didn't have the upper hand already.
Well, yeah, I mean, like he
Right.
needs more, like he needs
Yeah.
more of an
Right. Well,
advantage.
that's what I'm
But
saying. So,
but I think Morgan's right. You can't break the pitcher, and Sean said that too. But also, you're putting a lot of power on the umpire's hands to enforce this rule, and we'll get to the CB Buckner thing over the weekend in a minute. But we have some umpires that I think that scares the hell out of fans that they're going to have that kind of power to regulate a time clock. These guys can't call balls and strikes, let alone keep track of time. This is going to get really interesting. Yeah, Morgan, you're right. Nomar would never have made it. David Ortiz never would have made it. He had to spit on his gloves and clap and do his whole thing. I mean, it's going to change how these guys get ready and get in the box. Some
You know,
guys won't matter. Some guys, it will actually change the routine. Manny Machado even said it. I don't like it. It's going to be hard to adjust, and I may be down 0-1 a lot because I have a routine I have to go through.
I'll say this, and then I if we want to move on, this will be my last piece to it. I like outset of the rule. I'm liking it so far. I recognize that there are drawbacks and there are negatives that will likely have to be tweaked and adjusted. But let's not hammer baseball fully yet, because they're trying to make an adjustment. They're trying to get more action in a game. And I think they recognize that sports out there, other sports are doing what they can, and they're tweaking rules every year to make it more exciting, to make it more viewable, not just for the people in person, but for people that are watching on TV. I get all that. They're trying it. Are there going to be drawbacks? Likely. Are they going to have to tweak things? Likely. Could they do away with it altogether in the next 2 years? Maybe. Doubtful, but maybe. But let's just let it see how it plays out. I will say this, though. I do think baseball already has an umpire problem. We've been saying that for 2 years. This does put another notch that they could screw with, which I'd be lying if I said it did make me nervous.
My final thought on this whole thing is there was a meme going around. It's like, why is baseball making all of these changes to people that aren't going to watch baseball anyways because they're too busy watching Netflix? I mean, I get trying to make the game more excitable or viewable for the younger generation. Baseball's an old game, right? It's the average fan is 65. They're retired. They're watching it every night. You know, like it is. Like our generation and below don't really watch baseball like we do. They don't. It's boring. It's slow. So like I get them keeping up with the times, but I don't know. But again, to like kind of piggyback on that, in May, this isn't even going to be an issue. The players are going to be in the routine. They're going to know, and we're not even going to notice the pitch clock.
But honestly, Nick, though, I agree. But I honestly think this goddamn cat. I'm still talking. I got to let this cat in here. He's fucking going crazy. And for the record, I'm not a cat guy. So let's just.
Well, yeah. Ken points out that he's 68, so thankfully we're keeping the age down because of guys like Ken.
Right.
But I'll say this.
You're welcome.
I think I'm with you, Nick. But what we're seeing with so far with these 2.5, 2 hours, 45 minutes, these shorter games, I think this is what the product is supposed to be. When people like Ken fell in love with the game of baseball, it wasn't lasting 4 hours. They didn't have 10 specialists in the bullpen where they were going to make they weren't changing pitches every other batter from the sixth inning on. They didn't have, they didn't have Gregory Soto's and these guys that are taking like 75 seconds in between pitches. Like, so the product when these guys fell in love with baseball was a quick 2.5, 3 hour game that was full of excitement because it had guys that were running and fast moving. Like the game that we have settled into the past few years is not the game that they fell in love with. It's still baseball,
right? But
like it's a glorified home run derby now. So like, let's try and get a little bit back to what baseball was. Like
that's fair.
That's why I think we're going to get more baseball, and I'm excited for that.
And they haven't changed the fundamentals of the game, right? It's not like Bob Gibson went out and had a 1.12 ERA and they're like, hey, the mound's too high. Let's lower this shit. Like they're not changing the fundamental part of baseball. They're not changing the mound height. They're not changing the base length. Like it's just like, hey, get the ball, pitch the ball, see ball, hit ball. Like,
yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if this thing, if it goes pretty smoothly, I wouldn't be. And the only complaint from the pitchers is like, hey, man, like we felt rushed. All right, well, let's up it to 40 seconds or 45 seconds. Like, I mean, that's within the certain realm of possibility that they do, and they don't do away with it, but they just keep it there to just say, hey, let's keep this thing moving.
What is it? Is it 20 seconds? 15?
I think 30. 30.
Okay, if you can't get the ball and pitch it in 30 seconds, then there's an issue.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's 30. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure 30 is what I saw.
Either way. Whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of changes to the game, and you know, it even gets to, you know, back in the 70s, you didn't see a lot of 3-2 counts. You saw guys swinging early in the count. You saw a lot of contact. You saw a lot of activity. And honestly, in my opinion, what kills baseball is the fact that these guys go up there waiting to get down with 2 strikes. Half these guys don't even freaking swing the bat until they've got 2 strikes on them. They work counts like crazy. They're taking a lot of pitches. They're fouling a lot off. I was trying to find some stats, and there's not really any good ones in terms of like, you know, kind of pitches per game. But you know, the average length of a baseball game from, you know, 2000 to now is it's gone up 5 minutes in 22 years. The big changes came in the 80s. You know, when the game transitioned from the 70s to the 80s, it was about a 2.5 hour game, and then it quickly got to 250, 252, 257, 3 hours. You know, you were at 3 hour games in the mid 90s. So, you know, it's come on from a lot of different things. It's specialization. It's guys working counts. It's TV. You know, in the 70s, a lot of these games weren't even televised.
Well, yeah,
you were
there's
just
that.
you were cranking through them. So there's
I
a
mean,
lot of
when did
factors
the-
that have changed the length of the
When
game.
did the DH come into play in the American League? 70 something.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to say 70s too.
Say it was
Right?
in the
I mean,
70s.
But that's when the paradigm shift happened in the American League. At least, like, hey, look, I don't think we're ever going to get down to regular
No.
June MLB baseball games happening in 2 hours and 25 minutes, and I'm not so sure I want that. But quite honestly, even if the games still go 3 hours and 15 minutes, I don't care. But let's keep them flowing.
Right.
Like, let's keep it so that like did you go? Okay, last thing, I promise this is my last thing. Have you guys seen the thing that went viral on TikTok, and it was like this stitched? It was from the Barstool Baseball account, and it was the pitch, the famous one in like the 2006 maybe NLCS, or what, 2016, 2006, Sean, Jesus, 2016, and it was David Ross at the plate. He was the catch. He was catching for the Cubs, and then they were playing the Dodgers, and the Dodgers pitcher's name is escaping me right now. And he come into the game. There's a guy on second base. He throws a pitch, and it was a taken fastball down the middle for strike, 0-1. It took him like 2.5 minutes before he threw the next pitch, because he stepped off, and then he gets on, and then David Ross steps out, and then he gets on, and then he does some lazy throw back to second base, and then he gets on, and then he steps off again, and then he finally throws it.
Yep.
So the guy in TikTok stitched together on the bottom a video of Jose Altuve's inside the park home run when he was a rookie in Houston.
I saw this.
He completed 7 inside the park home runs in between the time he threw the first and second pitch. So I guess my point being, I don't necessarily care if the games still take 3 hours and 5 minutes, but that
They
can't
gotta be
happen.
moving. It's
Right.
it's gotta move.
Like things like
And
that
then-
can happen. And as long as those things don't happen, people will watch the games, because even though the games last 3 hours, they're filled with things to watch. It's not just a waste of time.
Fair.
What I will say, and Morgan stole my point, is my final take on this is you can do pitch clocks, you can do whatever you want, but ultimately people don't watch baseball because they don't even know who plays the game anymore. I mean, I was listening to a podcast 2 weeks ago. Gary Vaynerchuk was talking to some people, and even he made the comment of, what is MLB's problem? Nobody knows these guys. If the top 5 MLB players walked into the Mall of America tomorrow, or any mall in the country, 90% of people would walk right by them, having no knowledge of who Mike Trout is or who Juan Soto is, or because they don't know who they are. The average American has no idea who these baseball players are because MLB does a terrible job promoting them. And even when they do promote them, you can't watch the goddamn games because they're blacked out. So what MLB has is a media problem. Until people know these players and until they understand the matchups and the excitement of the matchups, like, why do people watch Monday Night Football? Because they spend all friggin' week touting the matchup of this quarterback against that quarterback and that coach and that defense, and they beat you over the head with the matchup. MLB, hey, we got games every night. You should watch them. Doesn't matter. They don't even tell you who's playing. It doesn't matter. And I think that's the problem. And Morgan said it. Like, until people understand who these guys are and why you should watch them, these games could last 30 minutes. Ain't nobody watching them. The average American doesn't care because they don't know who the players are.
My point on that is, do you remember the show This Week in Baseball? It's an older shape.
I still hum the music to it every so often.
Yeah,
I love that show.
They had Mike Lansing, who was he was a premier second baseman for the Montreal Expos at the
I love
time.
the fact he always had the pine tar mark on his back from his bat.
Yeah, So like everybody loved Mike Lansing in
Oh, yeah.
Montreal, and he went
He was
out on
like
the
Joey
street
Votto.
and he was like introducing himself, and he's like, "Hey, I'm the second baseman for the Expos," and people were like, "Yeah, okay, buddy," and like
Yeah.
kept walking. And he was like,
There were even
"Okay,"
people that went,
like,
"Who? The
but
Expos?"
right. So I mean, it's just like to your point, like they just don't know who they
Every
are, and
every person in the goddamn world knows Patrick Mahomes. Every person knows who Patrick Mahomes is.
Yeah.
But I bet almost nobody knows who Juan Soto is. They just don't, because MLB doesn't promote these guys, because MLB controls all the media. It's all regionalized, and there's no national promotional effort at all.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, we talked about it last year. I mean, it's the banning people from banning people from
More
posting
people know
clips.
who Joey Chestnut is than friggin' Juan
Like,
Soto.
but like banning people from sharing a clip on Twitter,
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
right? Like copyright infringement. Okay, fine. I guess I don't know the law. I'm not a lawyer. Is it copyright infringement? Maybe. I don't fucking know.
Sure.
But I'll say this: you guys, as baseball, are relying on word of mouth, and then you're not letting me spread the word. So, like that's the craziest part. Like that is
Yeah.
nuts. Not to say that I have a lot of followers on Twitter, but the point being is you're relying on word of mouth because you're not doing it yourselves, and then you're going to slap the wrist of the people that are trying to spread the word. So I do think they have a problem there. So we'll see. You know what we talked about last week. I think they're hopefully there's some truth to the fact that they're trying to fix the regional blackout coverage nonsense. So hopefully they get that squared away. So
I just want to say, Sean, for the record, my social media is enjoyed by at least 4 people. So I
Yeah.
think that's impressive.
God,
amen.
I'm way better with you guys. I got 6. All right. Anyways, so let's get into the umpire power hunger before we move on. The whole CB Buckner and Carlos Marmol. I don't know too much about it. Harrison, you grab the reins on this one.
Yeah. So I sent Sean and Nick a message over the weekend. I'm like, CB Buckner needs to be fired. Like immediately, it has to happen. And the response to both of them was, wait, why? What happened? So on Saturday, CB Buckner was umpiring the Cardinals game, and Marmol came out to give, before the game starts, they bring the lineup cards to home plate, they hand them back and forth, they shake everybody's hands, umpires, coaches, it's all this little powwow, and it's a little show of sportsmanship. And CB Buckner refused to look at Marmol and shake his hand. And this all stems from an ejection last August where Marmol got thrown out and he came out of the dugout, and CB Buckner's comment was like, no, you're the new guy. You don't, you're too new. You don't get to come out and question me. And Marmol basically responded back with, the game's left you behind, effectively calling him a dinosaur. And CB Buckner now, what is that, 6 and almost 7 months later, now will not shake his hand because of their interaction last August. So and this was done right at home plate during a spring training game. It was caught on camera. The whole thing was seen. All the other umpires are apologizing to Marmol for how it all went down. CB Buckner apparently shook his hand today or whatever yesterday at their next game. But you've got an umpire, back to the whole power hungry thing. You've got an umpire holding a grudge against a manager from 7 months ago over an ejection and what was said, which, as far as I'm concerned, cannot happen. And why CB Buckner was on a field the other day blows my mind. I don't care, union or not. That man should never be on a Major League Baseball field ever again. He disrespected the game and a manager of the game openly in front of everybody over a beef from 6 months ago, when honestly Marmol got ejected for a horrendous call at home plate that Buckner was wrong on. And even the pitch cast showed he missed the strike call by like 4 inches. It wasn't even close. Marmol had every right to be upset, and Buckner can't let it go. So this is the umpire thing that drives me crazy. Even Angel Hernandez was part of that crew the other day, and even he apologized for Marmol with how it was handled, which says a lot. But a guy like CB Buckner should never be on a Major League Baseball field again. And that was my take.
I got nothing to add. I mean, that was very well said. But I mean,
and MLB is reviewing it, which means nothing will happen. They'll sweep it under the rug.
Well, like you said, it's a union thing, right? They'll give him a slap on the wrist and be like, if it happens again, then it's like strike one. You get 3 more tries. Or
at this point, union or not, he should not be on a field again, and Major League Baseball should get sued over it to prove a point.
I agree.
Yeah, no, I Major League Baseball is an umpire problem. We've had an umpire problem in this league for a little while now. We've seen numerous instances, and it's not just CB Buckner; it's other umpires.
No.
Umpires are like offensive linemen. Like the best ones, you don't even know their names.
That's the goal.
Like
Right.
you don't even know who they are. They stay out of the way. They don't make mistakes. They're just professional, good at what they do. The ones that you know and see all the time, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. Right.
You know, we see it all the time, though. We see umpires that are home plate umpires. And listen, it's the nature of sports. Teams want to win. Managers want to win. You make a bad call, they're going to chirp you. That happens in every sport. And you see, for some reason, these Major League Baseball umpires that think that they're like above reproach, that how dare you question them? You know, you see them. A manager or a pitching coach will just say something from the dugout. He'll take the mask off and stare at him. Let it go. Like, you're looking for a fight. You're looking for an argument.
Yeah.
And then the guy comes to the top step of the dugout, boom, you're gone. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you're looking for an argument. This is
we
dumb.
can't even talk. Like we can't even talk about it.
Like that, those things like that are what drive me nuts. You know, and I'm not going to speak to the 70s and 80s. I wasn't alive. Like, I have no idea if it happened back then. I imagine it didn't, but maybe it did. I don't know. But it's making it hard. Like there are literally certain games when there are certain umpires at home plate. I have a hard time watching them.
Yeah, I can think of one time in my life I actually heard an umpire say, "Yeah, I missed it," and that was Joyce when he messed up Galarraga's perfect game.
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
the only time in my life I remember an umpire saying, "Yeah, I blew it." We've heard
But
NFL.
even that was the next day. But even that was the
Right.
next day. It even took him to the next day.
We've heard NFL refs come out and say, "Yeah, we screwed up that pass interference call. We messed up that." Like we've heard NFL refs come out and eat some crow and say, "Yeah, we blew it," and even the league has come out and say, "Yeah, they blew it." But in MLB, these guys can blow it, and they still get patted on the back and run back out there the next day, and there's no recourse. You know, okay, maybe you lose a playoff game. Okay, whoop-de-doo, but I'm still behind home plate in a game in September that means just as much as the first round of the playoffs.
Right. Well, that's exactly right too.
It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And these guys that have terrible strike zones don't put them behind the plate anymore. There's a reason in the NFL, like you're either a line judge or an umpire, like you have a role.
Yeah, you have to work. Yeah, you have to earn.
You got to
Yeah,
earn your way
You
to
know?
the top. If you suck behind the plate, then you don't go back there.
And those
It shouldn't
guys
be
aren't
that
even
easy.
full-time refs. Those guys aren't even full-time.
No, Ed
Like, these
Hockley,
guys,
Ed Guns Hockley was an attorney for years, and he was
Yeah.
out there. He was reffing games.
these guys are legit. This is their job. This is their career.
What they do, and they get paid
But-
really well for it.
My favorite one is going back to Joe West and Madison Bumgarner with that like 2 minutes.
I was just gonna
stare-off.
say the Madison
So
Bumgarner
good.
one was awesome because Joe West came out, like stood in front of the plate, like I thought they were gonna
And
fight.
they just didn't even say anything. They just stared at each other. Then finally, at the same time, they both just went and nodded, and
Yep.
then that was it, which is fine. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I
Um,
love Ken's point. You know, there were back in the 70s and 80s, there were some managers that were all over these umpires every night.
Yeah.
But like Ken said, they took it. Like it was part of the deal. You know, if you weren't having a good night, they told you about it. Just like the fans booing a guy at the plate, and the umpires get crap too.
Well, listen, as funny as that Joe West Mad Bum thing was, and God knows it was, that's Joe
crazy.
West looking for a fight.
Oh,
You're right.
he was
1,000%.
bringing it. He was
Like-
just trying to get him to take him.
Like if Joe West just turns around and walks back, Madison Bumgarner turns around and walks back, and if you're
Boom.
going to be on the side that like shits on Madison Bumgarner, you got to shit on the official, and other way around too. Madison Bumgarner is also looking for a fight. So, but the
Right.
idea behind it though is you're the umpire. Be the umpire.
Yeah,
Right? You're there
some control.
to. Yes, that's what it's there for. You're not there to make things worse. Like you're not there to throw gasoline on the fire. It's just they more often than not, and it seems like year after year it's getting worse and worse. But more often than not, they're the ones like instigating these arguments,
Oh, it's awful.
and then like they're above reproach. Like God forbid you want to question them.
Well, and there was
And we've said it before. We've said it before. They should have to answer questions after a game.
I would love that.
They should
Or-
have to face the media.
Or at least answer to their scoring. They get their scoring like later that night or the next day. Like there should be like a call of like, okay, you blew it last night. What happened?
And I don't even necessarily care if they answer to a missed call because listen, they're human, dude. Like everyone, like the players are human. They make mistakes. They make bad pitches. They make errors. They swing and miss. Umpires are human. They miss calls. I don't necessarily care
No.
if they want to own up or talk about a missed strike. They missed it. So be it. I would like for them to have to argue, why were you looking for a fight in the third inning? Why wouldn't you let it go? Like
Right.
that. Those are the questions I would like them to have to answer because those are the things that exacerbate things. And those carry over game to game because they're now the first base coach the next night or they're the third base coach the next night. Like,
Yep.
Umpire, not coach. You know what I mean? They're like,
Yeah.
but they're still there. So like, even at like, you're looking for a fight on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like that's going to carry over to Monday. Like the
Yeah.
whole thing is a problem. And they
No
need to
worries.
get a handle on the umpires, I guess is the point.
Well, and I think the one thing too for the guys behind the plate that are getting their scores the next day, there's no umpire should be perfect. Like let's be realistic.
There
for a minute.
was last year. We
I
did
know.
have a
Yeah, there
perfect
was.
game last
I know.
year.
But
Yeah.
in reality, like that ball is moving so fast with so much movement. If these guys get it right like 90% of the time, they're
Oh, they're
killing it.
fantastic.
Like they're killing it.
Fantastic.
So I mean, you have to allow margin for error because they're human. The game moves too fast, but that's also the beauty of baseball. Is like not every call is perfect. Like sometimes you get one, sometimes you don't. But it's when the umpires immediately go to the ejection or escalate the situation versus control it. Like I think I can remember situations either last year or 2 years ago. JD Martinez, ball in. JD just turns back and goes, "Hey, where was that?" Because JD wants to know what's the strike zone tonight, and he got thrown out in the first inning for asking that question. Where was that? It wasn't like he said, that call was terrible. Like you can read his lips. Where was it? Because he wanted to know what the strike zone was. A lot of players do that. They'll look back and go, okay, where was that? Because they want to know the strike zone.
Yeah.
It's the umpires that go to the quick trigger or start to cause the fight that I have a problem with. You missed the call. It happens. I mean, Joyce completely ruined a kid's perfect game and came right out and owned it. It happens. Like you're human. Things happen. But it's when these guys go right to escalating situation and they cause the problem that you have to shut it down.
Well, and the thing with them is that they don't start with a clean slate, right? I have a grudge against you, Harrison, and this series. When you have me again 3 series later, like it's a quick trigger for me. Like you better not even look at me, you better not even say my name, or I'm going to talk to you. So the fact that they don't start with a clean slate is also again another part of the, the whole power hungry umpires.
Yeah, it's you're dealing with humans. Humans are unpredictable. They carry grudges. And sometimes these guys may have had like maybe they got in late. Maybe they had a bad night's sleep. Maybe somebody peed in their Cheerios. I don't know, but they come to the ballpark pissed off, looking for a fight. They bring their personal life in. They bring a situation off the field in, and they're just looking to take it out on somebody.
Yeah. All right, let's lighten the mood a little bit here, and let's get to our NL Central preview here. I'm
gonna go. Can I go out on a limb and make a crazy prediction?
Go ahead. Let's see it.
The Pirates and Reds won't make the playoffs. You heard it here first.
Ooh, I don't know. That's a tough one. You want to take this first? Who wants to go first here?
You go, Nick.
I got the card. Oh, all right.
Go ahead, Sean. Go.
Okay, I got the Cards winning it. I got the Cubs in second, Brewers in third, like neck and neck. I'm talking.
Really?
I love what the Cubs did defensively this year. I think the Cubs are going to be a team that keeps games really close defensively. I like their offense. Like I like some of the bats. I think Suzuki's only going to get better. I love Dansby Swanson. I love Nico Horner in second base. We'll talk about him in a minute. I think Ross is a really good manager, good baseball guy that they seem to love to play for him. And I just think they did enough. And maybe it's just me thinking that they were not talked about enough, which is maybe why I'm giving them a little bit extra oomph. I think the Cubs are going to be really good. I think there's going to be a big distraction in the Milwaukee clubhouse with the Corbin Burns situation. I think Corbin Burns is going to be good. I think Milwaukee is a good team. I think the Cubs not just loosened or lessened, but completely closed out the gap that was there last year between them. I think they're right there with them, if not. And I think they're built to be a team that plays 162 games. So
if the Brewers pitched like they did last year, not well, the Cubs had second place easily, I think. And I don't think it's close, honestly. The Brewers pitched really well the year before last. Corbin Burns was lights out, and then they had an off year last year. I think you're right. I think if they come out and pitch like they did last year, they don't have a chance. I think the Cubs take second place.
That's why. I mean, I have the Cubs in second place, Brewers in third place. I have the Reds in fourth and the Pirates in fifth. I mean, that's my
wow.
My division.
I have it way different than you guys. I thought we were going to be right in line. So I get the Brewers winning the division. I think they're probably a 90-win team. I think the Cardinals finish a couple games behind them. I think the Cubs are about a 500-ish ball club, maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 80 and 84 wins probably. I think they missed the division by a few games. And then I think the Pirates and Reds don't even matter. But I think I think the Cardinals got worse in the offseason. They did not improve. They lost a lot of talent off that team. You got Yachty, you got Pujols, you traded Harrison Bader. You've got a lot of holes. You've got one actual full-time outfielder on your roster right now and a bunch of young guys. I think the Cardinals are going to be fun to watch. I don't think they're going to be super good. I think they're going to be I don't know, maybe 85 to 87 win team. I think the Brewers still have the pitching. I think they got Wilson Contreras, which I think fills a big hole for them. They got some young guys that are a good core. I think they're going to pitch the lights out because I think Corbin Burns is pissed and this is a prove it year for him. I don't think they trade him. I think they're smoking something if they do that. But
yeah,
I
don't
actually
think they trade him either.
I think the Brewers have the better team in that division. I think they win it. I think the Cardinals finish second. I think the Cubs are in third, probably 5-6 games back, but better than I think some people expect them to be. And then you got the Reds and Pirates who cares if they still exist.
And the Brewers possibly could have the rookie of the year coming out of that. Jackson Chourio is the real deal. I saw him play down here in Carolina last year. The kid's good if he makes the ball team, so we'll see. But.
And so the Brewers have all that talent. You still got Rowdy Tellez. You still have Luis Urias. You added Jesse Winker. You added William Contreras. Like, they very quietly made improvements to that team. They've still got a loaded rotation. They gave up Josh Hader last year, but Hader was not great for them. He was kind of falling apart. I don't know. I feel like the Brewers have the team to win this division. I feel like the Cardinals got significantly worse. They did not add anything. They lost a lot of talent. They lost a lot of leadership. I think they're going to be good, but not great. They've got no depth. I mean, look at their roster right now. If any of their starters gets hurt, they're screwed. Like, their season's over.
Pretty much.
I mean, I think if they win that division, Marmol should be manager of the year because he's got a very, very thin roster to work from.
Joey Votto also has his predictions this year.
I love Joey Votto.
Extraterrestrials arrive on Earth April 15th. The 12-2 Reds and the rest of the planet learn from, communicate with, and befriend our alien friends. This process takes 5 months. Play resumes in October. The Reds sweep the playoffs and are World Series champs. Side note, the aliens ask if I would like to accompany them back to their ship and back to their planet. I oblige.
I love Joey Votto for the record.
Never to be seen again. So the Reds will come out and win.
Yeah. And Morgan makes the counterpoint to my argument about the Brewers, and he's right. The Brewers have one of two outcomes. They win the division or they finish like fourth. They're either gonna either play exceptionally well or they're gonna implode on themselves. I'm gonna go with they're gonna play well, but Morgan's odds of being right are just as good as mine because that team, they fell apart down the stretch last year. They were lacking a spark, and they 100% could be there again. But I do think with the additions of Winker and Contreras, they'll get some stability.
It's fair. All right. I mean, we'll see. I mean, that division could be just completely up for grabs. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
You could have the winner of that division win 85 games or less. You potentially could have that happen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wait,
all right.
Wilson Contreras is the Cardinals, dude.
William. Sorry, William. The other W.
Okay. I was sitting there for a second. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, William.
Yeah, William.
I may have said Wilson. I meant that's not what I meant.
Okay.
Because now you got both of them in the same division.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on to seventh inning where we have the best all-time second baseman and your best current 3 second basemen. I'll start with our viewers' picks. Chris McVetti just said Ryan Sandberg. That's all the one that he gave me. It was just he's like early memories of watching it with my with his great aunt, and it was just she was a huge Cubs fan, so it was always Ryan Sandberg.
Yep.
Jim Britt says Rogers Hornsby, Jackie Robinson, and Roberto Alomar for all time.
Yep.
Doug says Jackie Alomar and Craig Biggio. And then Ken said Rogers Hornsby's, Joe Morgan, and Rod Carew for all time. Who are your all times, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rod Carew and Joe Morgan. I mean, how do you go against those guys as your top 2? Second base, there was some good depth.
Yeah.
Like Craig Biggio was a guy 3,000 hits, just really steady second baseman. Another one that kind of we watched growing up with, Chase Utley was fantastic.
Mhm.
Jeff Kent was a really good, especially offensive second baseman. Like there were some really good ones. I guess I'll go Chase Utley with my third one. Not that I necessarily think he was like the third greatest second baseman of all time. But I really enjoyed watching him play. Even though I didn't love the way he ended his career in LA, but I mean that guy was steady for Philadelphia for so long.
He was so good.
And really, really good. Jeff Kent could hit, man. Jeff Kent could hit.
Yeah, Jeff Kent is one of those guys who's like super polarizing. You either love that guy or you hate that guy. It's funny how that works.
Only second baseman in Major League history to record 6 straight 100 RBI seasons.
I know he was an
Jeff
RBI
Kent could hit,
machine,
man.
and he lived in Barry Bonds' shadow for quite a
Well,
while.
that's what I was going to say. You're going to drive in Barry Bonds 100 times when
That's
Barry
the thing.
Bonds is
The guy
on
walked
base
every
5,000 times. Yeah. Who are your top 3, Harrison?
I struggle with
time.
this one. I went with Joe Morgan. To me, Joe Morgan's always been the gold standard for second baseman. He could field, he could hit, he was a leader, he won. So Joe Morgan for me was always the gold standard. And then after that, I went with Roberto Alomar. I used to love watching Robbie Alomar play. There's nobody that was as smooth on the field as him. And then for me, the third guy was I struggled finding one. I picked Craig Biggio. I really might want to make a case for a guy like a Dustin Pedroia who, nobody embodied the city they played in like Pedroia. Watched the Red Sox success. It trended with him coming on the scene. Nobody got more out of what they had than that guy. Nobody left it all on the field like that guy. But if you look at it statistically, I can't make that argument. So I would take Biggio as my third.
Yeah, I mean, I got pretty much the same as you guys. Rod Carew, Joe Morgan, those are the 2. And then Ryan Sandberg's my third. Just those 3 just completely embodied what second base was, offensive, defensively.
I feel like a lot of us spent a lot of time watching Cubs games in the 80s and 90s because they were on in the afternoon and you could find them. And I watched so many Cubs games as a kid, and that's actually how I grew to love the Cardinals because I seemed to catch a lot of games where the 2 of them were playing. But
yep, absolutely. All right, we'll move on to current second baseman now. Jim Britt said Jose Altuve, Marcus Semien, and Ozzie Albies are his 3 for right now. And he's actually the only one that answered the 3 for now. So who are your 3 right now, Sean?
So I got 2 in the same division. I love Nico Horner in Chicago. I love
great
him.
young player,
and particularly with the Cubs' ability to move him from shortstop to second base with Dansby Swanson coming. And I don't know if he was supposed to be a second baseman, if they had to put him at short because of the lack of options or what. Like, he just something about his game, something about the way he plays defense. He kind of reminds me of Pedroia, and this is like the dirt dog mentality. Like that was kind of diving around. Like he's built for second base.
Well, I think that a guy like that, being around a guy like Swanson now every day, he's only going to get better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Jonathan India is my second one. Bit of a down year last year with his second year. I think India is going to be fantastic. He kind of sneaky. Like if you look at the splits last year, he sneaky had a good second half of the year.
He did once he came back.
I think he was starting to make adjustments. He was healthy again. He had a really good pretty good second half of the year. I wouldn't say really, really good, but I think that's going to, kind of project in. So he played second in the minors. All right.
Yeah.
So that's thank
he
you.
came
Morgan.
up as a second baseman.
I think he's built to be a second baseman. I love that second base. Jonathan India, I like, really, really like. And then third one is going to be another one that I'll pick who kind of had a great 2021, kind of a down year last year, but I expect kind of a bounce back year, and that's Ketel Marte in Arizona. I very much like Ketel Marte. Offensively, more I'm not going to lie, I don't know. His highlights in my brain are not defensive highlights. He might not be a great defensive second baseman. I don't know. But guy hit like 320 something 2 years ago. 318. Let me look at 318. So a shade under 320 2 years ago. Had 108 hits.
He's like your Jazz Chisholm. He can play in the outfield. He's
played everywhere for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
kind of have to. No one else can catch the ball.
Well, I
for
said that's the sad part with a guy like Ketel Marte is that most of us don't even know who he is because he's buried down in Arizona where nobody cares.
dude, he can hit, man.
He's
Yeah.
so
The
good.
dude can hit. He can hit. So I'll get him up there. Again, do I think he's like the third best second baseman in all of baseball right now? Probably not. It's more of a projection type of pick, but I like him.
Good choice.
What about you, Henderson?
My top three. Reluctantly, I take Jose Altuve. I do not like Altuve. He's one of the guys that just drives me crazy, but it's hard to deny what the guy does every day. So Altuve, Andres Jimenez in Cleveland with the Indians, right? The Indians.
Yeah, the Indians. Yeah.
He's fun to watch. And then for me, I'm actually going to take Sean's Mets guy there, Jeff McNeil. The guy is he's serviceable defensively. He's good. He's not great.
Gotten better too, but he's gotten much better the past 2 years.
He's definitely improved defensively. I think he's actually become a very good second baseman in terms of the balance. And the guy won a batting title. It's kind of hard to argue with that. But the guy can hit. He's been able to hit he's always hit. And his defense has gotten better. So to me, he's that guy that falls in the third spot. I really wanted to pick Marcus Semien. I love Marcus Semien. He had an abysmal year last year. So I'd like to see him recover, and then he might take that third spot.
Yeah, and we were talking a little bit before the show, like we're going to see these guys more defensively now that the shift is banned. Let's see these guys that can cover that hole and cover it well, the ones that got the range.
Yeah, you've been able to hide some range issues by shifting guys around so they're in position.
Right.
It's really easy to have range when you're halfway in the right field. Right, so it's a little different.
My current three are Jose Altuve, Luis Arraez. Obviously not defensively, but the guy, hits about 666 each year. So, I mean, offensively, he's there. Also plays first base a little bit. So I don't know if he's a true second baseman, but you know what? I'm putting him there, and you're going to like it. And then my third one is Ozzie Albies. Now, I know the poor guy got hurt. He had the Chris Sale disease last year. He comes back after battling an elbow and then slides into second base in his first game back and breaks a finger, and he's done. Like, I get it, but he's still one of the best second basemen out there right now.
Yeah,
Current.
those are good. Not that I'm not walking back my Ketel Marte pick because I like him and I do think he's going to have a good year. But I'm glad we all went and had some variety.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I do think there's a lot of good second basemen out there this year. Like it's
absolutely.
I think you're going to see a lot of good. And just to kind of tie your point home, Nick, with the lack of shift, we're going to get back to seeing like second base is going to have to be like a position where you have to play defense. You're going to have range. You're going to have good instincts. You're going to have to be able to, make the plays up the middle, and especially in between that first and second base hole that, you used to be able to just kind of cover up with an extra guy down there. So, for a guy, we were talking before we hit record, but like for a guy in Miami like Arraez, I wonder how short of a leash, if we want to call it that, they give him at second base. Like I wonder for all the runs that he's going to give you, and typically runs are how you get wins, right? Look at Moneyball. You buy runs, then you buy wins.
Mm-hmm.
For all the runs he's going to produce, is he going to give that many up because he's such a dog food second baseman? Like, is that worth the trade?
He's so bad.
Like, is that worth Pablo Lopez, though? Like, you're giving up a pitcher.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so I wonder, like, does he have a short leash? Do they find another place for him and they move Jazz back to second because the defensive ability of Jazz? Like, I don't know. And I have no idea if that's even in their head. It was just something I was thinking about. And I wonder if that's something that we could see earlier in the year rather than later, because the other thing for Miami is I really don't think they're much of a threat to win the division. So it might not even matter. Like, it's not like he's going to be costing them a chance at the postseason. Right. So maybe they just stick him there and just say, hey, if you can get better in the next couple of years, maybe, I don't know, but just something to watch out for.
Yeah. Well, and it says a lot when the Twins pushed him from second base to first base,
Yeah,
like quickly last year too. Like they didn't wait long to move him over to first base because he was so bad defensively. The guy's 5'10", $175. He does not project as your typical first baseman. That's not a real big target to throw to. So that tells you how bad his defense was. The Twins put him out of position just to get him away from second base.
Yeah.
But they need the bat, though. You want that bat in the lineup.
The guy can hit with the friggin' lights out.
Yeah.
I mean, you need that bat, but my God, you got to hide the guy. You know, maybe he ends up as a DH for all we know. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Rounding third question, and we're gonna stick with the fictional baseball theme like we did last week, and we're gonna go to the top 5 fictional baseball players. So it can be any position, doesn't have to be starting rotation like we did last week. And we did have some answers on this one. We just had one, and it was from Doug. He stuck with Garden Hoser as a starting pitcher. Mickey Dominguez at second, Willie Mays Hayes, Luke Collins from Little Big League, and Benny
Luke Collins deserves to be in the top 5. Luke Collins was a hit.
I love friggin' Luke Collins.
Yep, and then Benny the Jet Rodriguez. So those were his 5. He's the only one that commented, but I'll piggyback on that because I got 3 of the same. So I got Benny the Jet, Luke Collins, Willie Mays Hayes. I have Dottie Henson in my top 5. Just raw talent across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't do a complete split on the warning track on a catcher's pop-up and make it look easy. No one can do that. And then I have Jack Elliott from Mr. Baseball, little Tom Selleck action. Now, I picked this one because like I always remember like my parents watching this movie like back in the day, and to fix his swing, he went to a driving range and they were just doing soft toss with a wooden bat and golf balls, man. Like, talk about a dream, dude. I would love to see just sit there and just take rips with a baseball bat and just watch that golf ball just take off.
It is so much fun with a metal bat to hit golf balls.
Oh, yeah. I mean, still only hit it about 50 yards, but I mean,
but that's good for you. That's a really, really stout a bat for you.
Yeah. But those are my top 5 fictional guys. What about you guys?
I'm going with the guys that I actually would want to play with. So I'm going heavy major league here. I'm going Rick Vaughn. I'm going Jake Taylor. Probably my favorite player of all time is Jake Taylor. I'm going Pedro Serrano. I'm going Willie Mays Hayes, and I'm going to round it off just because I like him so much with Benny the Jet Rodriguez. But I am all in on the major league cast. I don't want Roger Dorn though because he's a baby.
Fair.
Oh, only at the beginning when you threatened to take his money away, he was putting everything in front of those products.
Yeah, he's just like laying in front of everything. The guy had no skills, but he was willing to just like lay it out.
I could not agree more that Luke Collins needs to be on the list. Luke Collins is 1,000% on the list.
Yeah.
Jake Taylor's actually a really good one. He wasn't originally Harrison, but I'm going to steal that one because Jake Taylor's fantastic.
I love him.
And with a great catcher like Jake Taylor, tell me you don't want Billy Chappell on the hill.
Oh, for sure.
Billy Chappell on the hill all day.
Yep.
What was it, 5?
Yeah.
You have to have Ham Porter, right? I mean, you seem like a Ham
Porter
guy,
I love,
Sean.
I love Ham Porter. I'll take Ham Porter, and then I'll take T-Rex Pennebaker from Mr. 3000.
Oh my God, that's such a good one.
Hit bombs.
Have you guys seen the meme of Mike Trout with Ham Porter, and it says, one of these guys is the best power hitter of all time, the other one's Mike Trout.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, so good.
But yeah, that was pretty fun. We're probably next week, like we said, the WBC is going to start, so we'll probably start forming our questions around that and going forward. So we are going to start heading home here, where we have other news. I was tagged in a post by Joe Auger about MLB teams that are hitting under 240. So
amazing.
From 1998 to 2009, not a single team hit below 240. Now, as it gets, closer to now, it slowly and gradually goes up to last year, 2022. We had 14 teams. So almost half the teams in the league hit under 240 as a team.
And what's scary is of those 14, a handful of those teams were playoff teams.
Right. Yeah.
Freaking
I mean,
scary.
it just we've talked about this before. It just goes to show how baseball has completely changed, right? I keep bringing up the fact where it's easier for me to get up and swing for my touch hole and accidentally barrel one up against Max Scherzer than it is for me to string 5 hits in an inning off him.
Yeah.
You're not going to get 5 hits off an inning off Max Scherzer.
No.
So you have a better chance of taking a big hack and making it 1-0 versus, like Sean said last week, death by 1,000 cuts. You're not going to do that to Max Scherzer. He's going to mow you.
You might get 3 hits on that against Max Scherzer. You better maximize them.
Right.
But here's the other side of that coin, though, is you're not getting 5 hits in an inning with today's hitters against Max Scherzer,
Right.
because
they're
all swing and miss guys that are approaching for home runs. You put a whole bunch of hitters that are Tony Gwynn's at the top and those guys, like, you most certainly are. Like, not every inning. You're not getting 5 hits every inning off Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
But, like, you put the right lineup together, you most certainly can. And that's where, like, it's the approach has changed. And I wonder if it's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing. I wonder, has the approach changed because managers and teams are finding it easier to find guys that can hit those home runs and accidentally run into one? Or are there more guys that are doing that because those are the guys that get paid the most money? Like, I wonder, like, what's the driving factor?
Yeah.
Is it
I
because
think
the guys?
I think it's because the pitching has become so dominating. Look at the amount of pitches that have been over 100 miles an hour. Like, that has never been seen. Like, all these guys coming out of the bullpen throw triple digits. Every single one of them, unless you're a Boston Red Sox, can throw over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and Ken actually brings up a good point. Last year, you even had the DH in both leagues, and you still had more teams that never hit less than 240.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination of all three. So, like, I agree with you, Sean. I think the whole approach has changed, but I think it's the overall dominance of the pitcher has forced these hitters to change their approach.
Well, and I think you look at it too, like when you look around the league right now, and Moneyball has set in everywhere. Almost none of these GMs are former baseball players. Almost all of them are friggin' Ivy League stats and economics nerds. Moneyball is in full effect in baseball because when you look around the league, a guy like Luis Arraez, who wins a batting title, has the highest contact rate in baseball, gets shipped off for a power arm. And yet a guy like Cody Bellinger gets another contract because he occasionally runs into one. It is one of those things where baseball is rewarding. They're looking at run probability, and that's not done by singles. It's done by home runs.
Definitely homers, yeah.
You look at a guy like Tony Gwynn. In today's baseball, Tony Gwynn would be a highly undervalued guy because he doesn't hit a lot of home runs, just like Luis Arraez is. And yet you're throwing huge contracts at Aaron Judge. Now, Aaron Judge hit a ton of home runs last year, but he's got a massive injury history, tons of strikeouts, and yeah, he hit some bombs. But you have these guys. Joey Gallo signs another contract, 1 year, $11 million. That guy should be sitting on a couch somewhere because he can't hit. But he gets a chance because he runs into the occasional ball and sends it 450 feet. Baseball doesn't value contact and batting average like it used to. It values guys that produce runs, and that's what this game's all about. You may only get 4 hits in a whole game because the pitching is so good. You got to make sure that 2 of those hits leave the ballpark. Otherwise, you're not going to score.
Right, but I guess the point that I'm to Morgan here, pitchers are also emptying the tank more because pitchers,
absolutely,
they're only going 5 or 6, which 1,000% agree with. Yep. I couldn't agree with it more.
That's why you also have all the arm issues because these guys are max effort all the time.
But they're becoming harder to hit, though. Like, I guess, and maybe this is just we agree to disagree, but I look at, like, they're becoming harder to hit because the approach that you have is you're trying to barrel up everything that they throw. Right? Like, we talk, like the Max Scherzer example. If you try to barrel up everything that Max Scherzer throws, you might run into one and you will have a lot of strikeouts. But if you build a lineup to guys who aren't trying to barrel everything up, and they might barrel up the occasional mistake, but they're just putting the bat on the ball. They're putting the ball in play. Like, that's like, you don't need, if you build the lineup and you build your roster the right way, you don't need the Aaron Judges and the Joey Gallos to score runs.
Right.
If you build your lineup the way the Yankees build their roster, you do need your Aaron Judges to score runs, as we saw last year. But like, I guess that's the part that I'm hung up on, is like, it's almost like we've forgotten that like getting runners on base is not a bad thing. It's almost looked at as if
Right.
it's like a secondary thing. Well, we'd rather guys hit home runs. Oh, we don't have those. I guess we'll just get guys on base.
Right.
Like that's so I don't know. I would like to see it's probably that type of baseball is probably like as a complete is probably gone by the wayside. I would like to see some teams try to bring it back. Just maybe putting some scrappy hitters up there, like a guy a guy I watch every night, Jeff McNeil. That's what Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo do at the top of the lineup for New York.
They
And
wear you the hell out.
And you tell me those guys aren't valuable? I'm not saying you personally. I'm just saying like the
Right.
the Royal you. Like
No.
like those
Royal
guys are
you.
incredibly valuable.
Mhm.
Well, and you're kind of making the point I was going to make. Luis Arias wins the batting title last year, signs a 1-year, $6.1 million extension. Jeff Neal wins the batting title last year, signs a 4-year, $50 million extension at $12.5 million a year. Manny Machado just signed for $31.8 million a year. Trey Turner, $30 million a year. Like, baseball no longer values the contact, high average hitter. They value the guy that drives in runs and hits home runs. The game has changed. In the 70s and 80s, guys like Tony Gwynn, Rod Carew, those guys reigned because they were on base all the time and they drove pitchers crazy. Now in a game where you get 6 hits a game and not 12, nobody gives a crap about the guys that hit singles. They want, if you're going to get 6 hits, 2 of those better leave the ballpark or you're going to get shut out. And that's what the game's evolved to. You don't get as many hits in a game as you used to get. So you've got to maximize every single one of them, and you've got to find guys that can launch balls out of the ballpark. Otherwise, runs won't be scored.
I think we're all legit saying the same thing, just different ways. Because you're right. Like these guys are only getting valued.
I would appreciate it if Morgan didn't pick on your favorite player, Nick. I feel bad for you here.
I ignored that comment on purpose. I mean, you're right, Sean. Like the approach at the plate has completely changed. You don't have the contact guys. I mean, minus a few. You could say Bogarts is a contact guy that accidentally runs into one because he can put the ball opposite field. JD Martinez is kind of molded into that kind of hitter as well. I mean, just the pitching dominance, the approach at the plate. I mean, it's just all changed. It all has led to the 240 or lower than 240. Yeah. Having said that, it will be interesting if the shift does affect the overall batting average this year. Do I think it's going to affect it that much? No. But it could. We don't know.
I think we showed that the shift had I think it was a 7 or 10 point change in the batting average, but
yeah, it wasn't
and that was for guys like Joey Gallo that can't do anything but dead pull. But I think it goes back to, back in the days of Maddox and Glavine, they made that commercial where chicks dig the long ball. Well, now GMs dig the long ball, and that's what they want. So when you look at the top contracts in baseball, they're not for guys with super high averages or contact, or these are guys that are power hitters that drive in runs, because that is what the game needs. Because you're just not going to string 3 hits together in an inning like you used to 20 years ago. You just can't.
Right.
The pitching is too good.
Yeah, agree. All right. And then the last thing that I have tonight is Johnny Damon made his Savannah Bananas debut.
So cool.
And proceeded to ground out to third.
Yep.
So nice looks, Johnny Damon. But it's good to see all these ex-Red Sox going out there, and Johnny Gomes has been there, Bill Spaceman Lee has been there, now Damon. It's been pretty cool. So
Banana Ball is catching people's attention, and even the baseball purists are starting to look at that as a fun alternative, because those guys have a lot of fun. The game moves, you're entertained, the fans are engaged. It's cool. It's really cool what they do. And it's not like these guys can't play baseball. You got a bunch of guys that were highly touted Division I prospects that are playing for the Savannah Bananas because they just want to go have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all I had for tonight. Do you guys have anything else to round it out?
I got one thing to add that's kind of cool. So Northern Kentucky's Liam McFadden Ackman, that's a mouthful, hit 2 grand slams in the same inning yesterday in a college baseball game.
Fernando Tatis.
Yep.
Senior.
Yeah, right. Senior. Pretty cool feat. You did it in a college game for Northern Kentucky.
Yeah. I think I sent it to you guys, but it was cool. It was kind of like a chart on what the rarest things are that has
Yeah.
ever
Yeah,
happened in Major League
we
Baseball.
talked about it.
Did you
We
talk
talked about it on
then?
the one that you missed.
Yeah,
Yep.
of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the top
cool.
one.
It's cool.
The 2
Yeah.
grand slams in one inning was only happened once. But
That's
now
crazy.
twice, but it's so insane. But yeah, that's pretty cool. All right.
And I'll just say this to end it. Morgan had put in the chat here a couple minutes ago. The Cubs will be a good test because they don't have a ton of power bats.
Yep.
Bellinger, Patrick Wisdom. I mean, in Bellinger, who knows what you're going to get with him?
Yeah, right.
But a lot of good contact guys, which I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with him more. I
Yep.
think they'll be a fantastic test, which is why I think that's going to be a team that wins a lot of ball games.
They're going to put pressure on the
just-
defense for sure.
They sure are, and they are going to be. We're going to be sitting here in August, guys. They're going to be like a top 3 defense in baseball. Like that defense, their
Yeah.
defense themselves, I think is going to be fantastic. You know, I think we look at a team like the Texas Rangers last year offensively. I mean, they had some good power guys. They
They did.
scored a ton of runs. They scored a ton of runs because they got guys on base. They put pressure on you, and it's to the point that I was trying to make. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and
Right.
a bunch of Joey Gallos and Aaron Judges aren't the only way to score runs. Yeah, fine. Maybe every once in a while when you run into a Max Scherzer, but you're not facing a Max Scherzer every night.
Right.
Right.
Like the likelihood that you're building a roster so that you can beat the Max Scherzer is crazy. Because more often than not, you're facing guys that aren't Max Scherzer that you're making look like Max Scherzer because you can't put the bat on the ball. That's the more frustrating part.
Fair.
So I do think the Cubs are going to be a great test because I think the Cubs have built themselves a roster in a lineup and just an overall clubhouse that is going to put pressure on you every night offensively, and I think they will win a lot of ball games. That's going to be my sign off for tonight because I think the Cubs are going to be really good.
Yeah. And the Cleveland Guardians were that last year. That was a team that had
Yeah.
like no power,
Yeah.
but they manufactured enough runs to win.
Yeah. Fair point. So we'll see what happens. But all right, so we'll be on next Monday, and then the World Baseball Classic will start that
Mhm.
Wednesday.
Thursday, no, maybe the 7th.
The 7th.
Whatever day
No,
the 7th is.
Tuesday, I think it's Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday, even
I
better.
don't know. Math is hard. So yeah, so we'll preview some of that because it's pretty much the 2 Asian brackets start first. So they can get over here after their tournament, and then the U.S. tournaments start a few days after that. So we'll have a pretty good idea. But we got real live baseball action coming. I mean, spring training is happening, but yeah, some baseball that actually means something.
Yeah. Hey, this time last year they weren't playing baseball at all, so I'll take it.
And we didn't even know if we were going to get it. So, yeah. So, great way to start a podcast during a lockout. But you know what? We made it. We're on year 2. Let's
Good call,
go.
Nick.
Yep. Hey, whatever. All right. So, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Please like, subscribe, share, interact with us on all our posts, and, stick with us with our crazy questions of the week and all of that stuff. So, just stop by next Monday at 8, and we'll see you then.
See ya.
See you, boys.